Hello everyone, it's Julia with Senior Susie Stamps. I'm glad you're here with me today. It's rainy up here in the North Georgia mountains, so it's a great day to be in the studio. I wanted to touch base with y'all and wish you a happy new year and let you know that this year I'm going to try to be doing a few year-long, once a month series, just hopefully gearing some of them towards beginners and some of them towards more advanced card makers. Now, today we're going to start a series that is dealing with 6x6 paper, cutting the template in A2 size so that the framework on the card is A2 size platform. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to utilize every scrap of paper off of this 6x6 cut, either in a card front or in structural layering of the card, because you know when you send things in the mail, sometimes you need to bolster up the back of part of your pieces that maybe sit over top of another layer. So I wanted to welcome you to this new series of 6x6 templates. So I'm going to turn the camera down and we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to look at today is this layout, and there's a couple things that are of importance here when you're looking at designing a cutting template, and that is your first cut. And I hope you can see it, but the first cut on this template is right here at the 4.5 inch mark. So that would separate this out into two workable pieces, and then you can cut it here and cut it here, and then cut your little squares off that way. So this first piece, the largest one, is 4.5 by 3 1/4, and then the second one is 4 by 2 3/4. Now, those are a 1/2 inch apart, and what that does, it allows you on an A2 size layer to use your pattern paper for 2 layers and still have enough room for a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch solid border around each layer. If you were only a 1/4 inch apart to start with, which would be about like that, you really would probably just put pattern on top of pattern. The other thing you want to think about when you're doing a template is how many cards you actually want to have come out of a 6x6 piece of paper. Now, usually when I'm cutting, I cut 2 pieces at a time. And because I have a lot of paper here in the studio, I don't want to make 10 or 12 cards. I want to make 3 or 4 cards. So I like to have layers that are usable in 2 or 3 cards that way. And for example, let's just look at this one. You've got 4 1.5 inch squares, and there are lots of things that you could do with those. You could do, if you cut 2 of them at a time, then you'd have 8, and you could do a nice pinwheel card, or you could do 2 cards that have a square focal with them that way. And with 1.5 inches, you could just as easily cut circles out of this strip also. Just something to think about. Now, on this first layout, there is a little 1/2 inch by 2 3/4 inch piece here that can either be used as an accent piece, like this, if you're layering up, and then you could put something up here, for example, some kind of a little smaller focal point. Or you can use this just as an elevator. If you have a piece, if you put these on your cards like this, then you could use it on the back here to stabilize the card for mailing. And that's the way we'll use these kind of little accent pieces. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and I'm going to cut it out of 2 pieces of colored cardstock, and then we'll make some card sketches with it. So I'll be right back. I'm going to cut it to 4.5. And when you design a template like this, these kind of pieces here that you can either cut into 1.5 inch squares or circles or whatever you want to. These are very versatile, and you can change this pattern up. You could cut it in to little triangles, hexagons, whatever you want to do here with this. You don't necessarily have to just do squares. So just a word to the wise on that. Now the other one then, which is this second piece, we're going to cut at 3 1/4. And then our last cut is going to be at 4 on the smaller piece. Across the larger side, you want it to come up to 4 inches then. And again, I'm cutting both of these at the same time. So this is what we'll use then to make our first batch of card sketches. And let's go ahead and write the card layer size on the black, and it should show up fairly well. So this is going to be 4 by 2 3/4, and this is going to be 4 1/2 by 3 1/4, and both of those are A2 size layers. And then this one, I'm going to go ahead and cut it into the 1.5 inch squares. So I'm going to set these aside. We'll make a card with those later, but we'll just put 1.5 inch square. So I have some card fronts here, and you can see what I'm talking about then on the A2 size layer, with them having an equal border all the way around. And you could make 4 card fronts that way, but I don't want that many cards in the studio, so I'm going to put these like this, and that way we'll have 2 cards out of those 2 pattern papers, like that perhaps. Let's do one like that. And then on these, I think what we'll do, just to remind us that we have 2 possibilities, we'll just do it that way for today. So what I would do at this point then is to, if I were going to keep these for my stash, I would build these up into glued up card bases, and I would keep them in a folder with my template here, and I'd be able to pull out my own set of card sketches and my own cutting template that's based on an A2 size layer. So let's go ahead and cut some real paper now and see what we can actually come up with on some real cards. And I'll go ahead and glue these up and post them over on the Facebook page just for some card cut templates along with the cutting guide. There we go. Now this paper happens to be single-sided paper, and of course if you have double-sided paper, that kind of doubles your options a little bit. So I'm going to bring this in, and we're going to do another cut exactly the same way we did to begin with. These are our 4 papers. And I think we'll just do one simple and quick one to start with. I'm going to cut a white layer to go up underneath this one. That'll give it just a little bit of extra lift. This piece is 4 by 2 3/4, so I'm going to cut this at 4 1/4 by 3, and I'm going to glue this to my smaller layer for a little bit of additional interest on the front side of this card. This paper, this white paper, came out of my scrap bin, and it had a little score line on it, and I'm just going to trim that off. And now we have a nice card layer that can go on top of our larger panel. There we go. And then this can become a very nice working card front. It could very easily have another piece of cardstock underneath this. If you were using colored cardstock, you might want to do that so that you have yet another layer on it. Now let's look at this one. And I want to take one of my top layers and cut it down to 4 by 5 1/4, and we'll look at a different way of using these two pieces of paper. And that is to use your smaller piece as a band across the middle, for example, and this piece then can go up like that. You use your two pieces so you have one card out of these two and one card out of these two. Let's go ahead and get this glued on. Now I can utilize these two pieces to stabilize the top and the bottom of this panel. And that will completely use all of the little bits and bobs that we've got going on here until we get to the squares. So now we can just go ahead and glue this piece down. And of course you could do whatever kind of corner treatment you want. You could distress the edges. You can do whatever you want to. This is just basic use of cardstock to use up some of these partial packs of 6 by 6 paper. And then I might want to put a little dark edge around this and put it up on a card base, right like this. And this card is ready for a focal and a sentiment, and you'll be out the door with it. Now, let's just see what we've got here. And I want to take a piece of white cardstock and cut it to 1 and, let's see, 3 1/4 inches square. And we'll just do one of these, alternating our decorative paper like that. And that works perfectly fine that way. And then we'll have another card front that looks like this with a sentiment down here and a focal point there. And then with these pieces, and I think I'll cut my white layer down to 3 3/4 by 5, 2 of them, the two of the same pattern, and cut them in half on the diagonal by lining them up in your paper trimmer to the points. And then you could put your 4 corners down that way. And you could take your 2 other ones and make a nice little pattern like that. So it utilizes that 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2 inch pattern paper very nicely that way. In fact, let's just go ahead and glue these up and bring it right to the edge. And what I would do with a card like this is I would go ahead and put some foam tape up underneath this panel when I put it on the card front. And there we go. So now we have 4 nice card sketches that go with that layout, and there are no scraps left at all whatsoever to deal with. The next thing you'll need to do, of course, is to figure out a focal and a sentiment on your cards. I got some washi tape from Journal Say recently, and so I thought I might see if some of these might work on these cards, and if it does, then I'll post pictures at the end of the video. But that's it for today, folks. I thought maybe it might be something that would pique your interest a little bit to see if you wanted to make your own templates, or if you just want to follow along as I make mine. And I'll talk to you again next week, and have a great week, y'all. Bye.